let's talk with Tanjil down in the land down under, down in Australia. We have Tanjil wants to talk about misogyny in Buddhism. What?
Well, a bit more than that. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I am actually a bit whiny and complainy. I'm getting really tired of hearing people say, well, I'm going to take up Buddhism because it's a benign religion and there's no deities and it's a wonderful religion, when it's actually full of little spirits and gods and demons type things, and it's full of misogyny. And I thought Richard might be a great person to address that.
That depends on who you talk to, because I've just recently been in a huge conversation about the supernatural elements of Buddhism on a Facebook group, and it got shut down. So,
come on.
Yeah,
Really?
there was quite a lot of disagreement on that. But go on, Tanjil.
You've studied the religion. You've studied Buddhism, haven't you?
Yeah.
It might be worthwhile just giving the audience here who may not be familiar with you. I mean, to say that you've studied Buddhism is a bit of it's selling you short, I think. So, can you explain what your background is with enlightenment? No, with Buddhism.
Well, I don't have any background with enlightenment. No, I've been studying meditation, specifically Buddhist meditation, for 20 years or so. I started under a Chan teacher, which is kind of the Japanese form of Zen, and that was a very intense year before we went back to China. Then I went kind of through a few different teachers from different traditions, and then I got into the Theravada stuff, and I've been studying the scriptures for about 10 years. I've currently doing a degree course in religion, philosophy, and ethics, which has taken a whole different dimension of stuff. It wasn't until I kind of started doing the degree that I started getting more into the scholarship of the Christian stuff. And my background is in kind of the Buddhist stuff. And like I say, I do have detractors, but don't we all?
So you've dabbled in, you've thought about it.
If you can see that row of kind of ready maroon books behind me, that's actually the Tipitaka, the Buddhist Tipitaka. That's the Buddhist equivalent of the Bible. It's about 11 times longer than the Bible. So it's a huge volume of work, and that's just the Theravada stuff. That's not including the Mahayana, which is a completely different school.
So for those who are watching this, I mean, you see the library behind Richard. For those listening, I mean, there's just all these books, and we see people all the time on YouTube who have books on books on books behind them as their background. But folks, Richard's actually read these. This is not just decorative. So, all right, with all that out of the way, tooting Richard's horn here. Let's talk about the substance of what Tanjil was asking.
Yeah. So, how many schools of Buddhism are there?
That depends whether you subdivide them or not. There are two major schools of Buddhism. There are the Theravada, which is the kind of oldest school of Buddhism, going back to that we have, the oldest surviving school of Buddhism that we have, and there's the Mahayana, which developed around kind of around the time of Jesus, I'd say, give or take a few years.
And would I be correct in saying that none of them are absent of spirits and misogyny?
Misogyny's, that's harder to say scripturally. Culturally, definitely. I can give you some examples of that. Spirits, look, this is the conversation I was having recently. The Buddhist texts contain all sorts of ideas about there are different realms of existence. There are heaven realms, hell realms. There are devas, gods, not creator gods as in Christianity, because in Buddhist cosmology there is no creation. The universe has always existed. But there are different gods, there are different devas, there are different spirits. There's rebirth, There's all these different supernatural elements. The Buddha was supposedly able to walk through walls, stretch out his arms and disappear and reappear in other realms. There's a story where he goes to talk to Brahma, who you may recognize from the kind of Hindu traditions, because Buddhism and Hinduism and Jainism, which is another surviving religion from that time, all came from this kind of proto-Brahmanism that was around in kind of the 5th century BC. So they're all kind of the same core things, although they have different ideas. The early Buddhist texts are full of discussions where the kind of the Buddha is talking to these different leaders from these different groups about the subtleties of the differences in, say, rebirth.
Where do you think the conception comes from? I guess the misconception that Buddhism is essentially a secular religion.
I think it. Yeah, I think it's probably. I mean, it's a hard question to answer in a kind of black and white way, but I think it's probably just because in the West we're used to the kind of creator God idea, and there is no creator God. And the Buddha was actually asked if, in the scriptures, was asked if there was a creator God, and he didn't answer. There was a series of questions that he refused to answer because he just saw them kind of surplus to the path. The Buddhist path is all about nibbana, attaining nibbana, and anything outside of that is kind of surplus to it. The whole Buddhist moral system is about, it's not like good and evil like it is in the kind of Abrahamic faiths. It's more of a kind of thing of what is useful to the attainment of nibbana and what is not useful to that goal. So that's the whole kind of moral ethics in Buddhism.
But isn't that where the misogyny comes in? Apparently, you can't reach enlightenment as a female. You have to wait until you're rebirthed as a male, and nuns monks avoid nuns because they might corrupt them.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, that's not a universal view, but it is a view in Buddhism that if you're going to kind of be enlightened, you've got to be reborn as a man before that takes place. Yeah, and the rules, sorry, go on, Tanjil.
I was just going to say, it just constantly frustrates me that people choose that as, and then claim that it isn't a religion, that it has no supernatural aspect to it, and that it's benign, and it just isn't. It's full of the same misogynies and the same supernatural elements as any other religion.
Yeah, there are specific schools of Buddhism. There's one of the schools of the Theravada, because as with a lot of religions, there's kind of subgroups and sub-schools and things like that. But there's one of the Theravada groups who traditionally in Buddhism, you can only become a nun if you've got a lineage of nuns, which supposedly goes back to the time of the Buddha to pass on that teaching. Because this particular school doesn't have that lineage anymore, they won't allow people to be nuns. So in Thailand, there's this great kind of thing going off where you've got people who are like living in communities as if they are nuns, but they're not allowed to actually be nuns. So there's a lot of that kind of political kind of stuff going on as well.
Interesting. Well, sorry to ring on with such a negative vibe, but that's what's been bugging me this week.
No, I'm glad you did, because I mean, there's on our show. I mean, just by virtue, I think of us being, based in America, where Christianity is the dominant religion. We tend to be very, very focused on Christianity. And one thing that I've talked about before, I really, really wish that we'd get people calling in from other religious traditions, because I think it'd be good for us, because the sort of universal element here of exploring what people believe and why with respect to their religious beliefs is that there's going to be these unfalsifiable claims. There are going to be the spirits and the all stuff that we people make confident claims about, really pretending to know things that they don't know in support of their religious beliefs. So yeah, Buddhism would be one. As Richard's talking about it, I'm sitting over here going, I don't know shit about Buddhism. Everything I know about Buddhism comes essentially from pop culture. So it's good to get for all of us to get some, a little more well-rounded in our exposure to these things.
Yeah. Well, thank you for answering those questions. That was really
anytime,
interesting.
Tanjil. You're everybody's favorite around here. So, but we have one more caller to get to. So we're gonna cut you loose.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Take
See you
care.
later.